There are ghosts in here. There are also ghosts. In here. Hey folks, it's Sarah, and I have 8-ish, I don't think I've counted them, 8-ish books from small and independent presses that have some sort of ghostly presence in them. They range in seasonality, so some of them are super spooky across the whole book. Some of them can really be read any time of year, but I thought it would be worth sharing them in case you're looking to add anything to your reading list for this season / year / life / whenever. First up, we have A Stranger in Alondria by Sophia Samatar, and this is published by Small Beer Press. And this is a fantasy novel set in the land of Alondria. The magic in here is really all about the magic of books, how they can transport you, how they can defy even death. And we're following a main character named Jevic, who has, after the death of his father, has just inherited his family's pepper farm, and he is traveling from his remote island home to the land of Alondria to do some trading for the farm. And he encounters a young woman along the way who is deathly ill, and she passes away. And throughout the rest of the book, Jevic is haunted by her ghost as she begs him to write down her story. So basically, so that she can share her story and live forever. There are definitely some parts in this book that gave me the chills. It's about who gets to tell their story and about this urge to be immortal. What books can do to help us supposedly achieve that dream. And it is fantastic. If you want to know more about Small Beer Press and the amazing books they publish, you can visit my other video, which I'll link to somewhere around here. But definitely check out A Stranger in Alondria or any of Sophia Samatar's books. They're fabulous. Next up, we have A Door Behind a Door by Yelena Moskovich. And this is published by $2 Radio. And this is the story of Olga, who is a young woman who in her childhood, she emigrated from the Ukraine with her family to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Olga has had, kind of a rough life up until this point, but her life is kind of starting to come together, and she's living with her girlfriend who she's deeply in love with. And then one day she gets an eerie phone call from a mysterious figure from her past that really messes with Olga, messes with her life, and sends her into the depths of the Milwaukee criminal underworld, or potentially could be the actual underworld that we're encountering in this book. And there are several ghostly presences that come up in the novel. It has a really unique structured with these headings, followed by short little paragraph or few sentences. And if you're looking for a book that is really bold and doesn't necessarily follow a clear plot, and you might not really know exactly what's going on throughout the book or even by the end, but you just want a wild ride and beautiful sentences and a spooky, eerie feeling of a strange and wonderful, of a strange and scary and spooky underworld, then definitely check out A Door Behind a Door. And $2 Radio is a fantastic publisher based in Columbus, Ohio, and I have a couple of videos where I visit their bookstore, and I also have a video where I read several more of their wonderful books that they've published, so check those out as well. So then we have a book that I haven't read yet called Brickmakers by Selva Amata, and it is translated from the Spanish by Annie McDermott. And this is published by a UK-based publisher called Charco Press that focuses entirely on work from Latin and South America. They publish fantastic novels, including Elena Knows, which by Claudia Pinheiro, which has recently received a lot of wonderful press and nominated for several awards as well. But this novel, Brickmakers, is also published in the US, I believe by Grey Wolf, but I picked up the Charco Press version. And from what I understand, this is about two young men, and we come upon them at the opening of the novel just as they have ended a about to be fatal knife fight with each other. And I'm guessing throughout the novel, through a series of flashbacks and possibly hallucinations, we learn about the story of how they came to this place and this fight that ends up fatal to both of them, I believe, which I think you know from the beginning. I can't be spoiling anything because I haven't read it, but I do believe that one of the characters is visited by the ghost of his murdered father. So I figured it merited a place on this list because of that, and sounds very dark as well. So perhaps a good read for this time of year. Again, this is Brickmakers by Selva Amata, published by Charco Press and by Grey Wolf in the US. Next up, we have Ghosts of You by Kathy Ulrich, and this is published by OK Donkey. And this is a book of flash fiction, and it's all fiction that Kathy has published before in journals and such as part of her a series she calls the Murdered Ladies series. And each piece is about a different woman or girl who has been murdered, and it plays with the trope of a murdered woman being found, and that starting the plot of a narrative. That so many of our stories in our culture start with a murdered woman. And so each of these stories starts out the same way with a murdered woman. And it's, I'll read the table of contents here. Being the murdered girl, being the murdered wife, being the murdered lover, being the murdered actress. And it goes on, being the murdered professor, being the murdered cheerleader, being the murdered jogger, being the murdered blonde, being the murdered realtor. And each of these are written in second person, which is one of my favorites to read when it's done really well. So it pulls you in. And so, you become the murdered woman as you're reading this. And so you get to see, just like the murdered woman, you get to see how the story of all the people around you moves on and really starts from your death. So you no longer get to participate in the story, you're observing the story. And then we see kind of the impact of your death throughout these pieces of flash fiction. And it is really, really well done and super interesting. So I highly recommend it. The ghostly presence is certainly there. It's a light ghostly touch, but there are moments where there is a ghostly presence, and it's certainly a good read for this time of year. I highly recommend Ghosts of You by Kathy Ulrich from OK Donkey. Next up, we have another book that I haven't read quite yet, but I'm so excited to this month. We have Creatures of Passage by Maroya Yejide, and this is published by Akashic Books. And I've seen a lot of folks say that they have really, really enjoyed this book, so I cannot wait to read it. But I've heard rumors that it's about a taxi driver who is driving around Washington, D.C. in the late 1970s with a ghost in her trunk. So I think that merits it a big spot on this list. And Akashic Press is a Brooklyn-based publisher that's dedicated to publishing what they call urban literary fiction and political nonfiction. And they're really interested in publishing authors who, as they say, are either ignored by the mainstream or have no interest in working with the ever-growing, ever-consolidating big corporate publishers. So they have fantastic books. Definitely go check them out, especially Creatures of Passage, which I think is from what I hear, a perfect book for this time of year. Next up, we have Ghosts by Edith Wharton, and this is celebrated by New York Review of Books. And this is a collection of short fiction from Edith Wharton, who is a celebrated and well-known American author from the early 20th century. She was the first female recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction for her novel, The Age of Innocence, and she's also well known for her other novels, Ethan Frome and The House of Mirth. What I didn't realize is she had all this spooky short fiction. So from what I understand, these are stories with kind of a light supernatural touch or a bit of a ghostly presence, which really dive into the everyday matters of all of our lives, including marriage and aging and wealth and death. And so it sounds like it's just spooky enough for this time of year, and I cannot wait to check it out. And we also have, in the short fiction category, Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. And this is a celebrated, well-loved collection of short fiction published by Grey Wolf. There is actually a novella in here that I wanted to mention in particular. These are all stories that all have kind of the weird, supernatural, speculative element to them, but kind of a novella-length story in here called Especially Heinous was one of my favorites, and it composed of synopses of Law and Order SVU episodes. So you literally get the name of the episode and the synopsis of the episode, but the story goes deep, dark, and weird from there. And there are absolutely some ghostly elements to that novella. At that time, when I picked up this book, I had never read anything like that with that unique structure. And it stands out as one of the weirdest, most wonderful reading experiences of my life. I just adored it. But I think it would actually make an interesting pairing with Ghosts of You, because both kind of play with that trope of the murdered woman, that starting off the episode or the story or whatever it is. So I think reading these two together, Especially Heinous in this collection and Ghosts of You, would make for a really very interesting October reading experience for sure. But there is another story in this collection that I loved, called Real Women Have Bodies. I think that's what it's called. Yes, Real Women Have Bodies. And it is about the premise is that there is this plague that is making its rounds on humanity, where women start to fade and fade and fade until they suddenly just disappear entirely. And it made me think, as I was looking back through this collection, do ghosts have to be dead? Can ghosts still be alive? So that's it was one of my other favorite stories from this collection, one that really left a mark. It had such amazing imagery that it really has stayed with me for years and years after reading it. So highly recommend, if you haven't read it already, Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. Okay, now we have a special moment because we have some book mail to open up here. This is brand new, hot off the presses, pre-order, just for this season. First time I'm doing an unboxing. Here we go. Ready for it? Oh, beautiful. Ghost Town by Kevin Chen, published by Europa Editions. And this is, the translator's not on the cover. Oof, it's a pet peeve. Let's see, this is translated from the Mandarin and the Taiwanese by Daryl Stirk. Okay, so Ghost Town, a novel by Kevin Chen from Europa Editions. This is brand new, just published. Winner of the Taiwan Literature Award. I added this here, obviously, the title, Ghost Town, but I hear that it's narrated by a group of voices, including characters both living and dead. So that made me think, okay, ghosts. This is the story of Chen Tianhong, and he lives in a small Taiwanese village. He has 5, 6, or 7 older sisters, and he's the youngest child. He's the only boy, long wished for boy within their family. He eventually leaves his town to move to Berlin when he's hoping, as a young man, hoping to seek acceptance as a young gay man in Berlin that he is not receiving in his town in Taiwan. But the book apparently opens when the main character is getting out of jail for having murdered his boyfriend. So that's where the book opens. I believe he returns to his town then in Taiwan to his family, and we learn throughout the novel, through various voices, living and dead, that some major family secrets, including what really happened, who actually murdered the main character's boyfriend and what actually happened there. So I can't wait. I've been looking forward to this book for a while. So excited to have it in my hands now. And again, that's Ghost Town by Kevin Chen, published by Europa. Wait, hold on. I just realized 2 of my other books that I was hoping to read this month are short stories and might have some ghostly presence within some of the stories. First, we have Women's Weird. Let's see. So this is published by Charco Press, a fantastic UK publisher that has really unique work that they publish. And they're strange stories by women, and they were published between 1890 and 1940. And you can see I have 2 stories marked in here for Victober because they are the only 2 stories in here that were published in the UK during the reign of Queen Victoria, within that time period. And so I have them marked to read for Victober, but I'm wondering if some of them have ghosts. Okay, so yeah, I do think that there are some ghostly presences in here. I'm gonna have to read it and report back. One of them is called The Haunted Saucepan by Marjorie Lawrence. So that sounds promising. The Haunted Saucepan, page 169. The Haunted Saucepan by Marjorie Lawrence. Sure enough, I think that's going to be a haunted ghost story. So we'll have to check that out. But I can't get enough of that cover. And then also from Small Beer Press, we have The People in the Castle, Selected Strange Stories by Joan Aiken. And Joan Aiken was I believe primarily a children's book author, but these are strange stories for adults, and they sound pretty spooky. One of the introductions is from Kelly Link, her very own self. So you gotta imagine that these are probably spooky and weird and strange. Tales of the uncanny and the supernatural, the creak upstairs, the half-remembered conversation that won't let you sleep, the room full of leaves that will amuse, delight, and raise the hair on the back of your neck. Have you checked the lock upon the door? Turned down the lights? Made sure there's nothing in the closet or under the bed? It's a selection of stories contained within. Find a horse that isn't quite what it seems, an alley where the devil is putting on a concert, an unpublished play by Shakespeare, a battle of wills that begins with a poet falling into an active volcano. Okay, I don't see the word ghost specifically, but those sound ghostly for sure. So give it a shot. We'll report back. That's good. It'll give me a task to report back whether there are, in fact, ghosts within The People in the Castle, Selected Strange Stories from Joan Aiken, published by Small Beer Press. So that's great. You got 2 bonus books we hadn't even planned for. If you found any interesting books here, I hope you'll hit the like button. That'll help these books get into the hands of even more viewers and readers. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed some of the ghostly presences around my house. Way back in August, when my son asked if we could decorate yet for Halloween, and he was told no, not yet, he took it upon himself to draw ghosts and tape them around the house. So we've been living with ghosts for a little while here, and then they just kind of tend to stick around. So I hope you all are having a spectacularly spooky season so far. Thanks for joining me. Mom, I love you. Thanks for watching. If you are watching, I don't actually know if you are, but I love you. Everybody have a good day. Go read a book. Bye.